Don't need you all in my zone. Spend so much time alone while I'm riding strap on my chrome.
Been out of these streets, nigga trying to eat while the police on family stealing from me. I'm on my phone being a prayer, but white Jesus can't save me. Get him away from me. I don't know what to say. So many niggas hating me. Get them away from me.
Always up on my own. Don't need you all in my zone. Spend so much time alone while I'm riding strap on my chrome. Always up on my own. Don't need you all in my zone. Spend so much time alone while I'm riding strap on my chrome.
Going sip on my own. Don't need you all in my zone. Spend so much time alone while I'm riding around with my chrome. Going sip on my own. Don't need you all in my zone. Spend so much time alone while I'm riding around with my chrome. Trying to keep it on the true side, nigga. Laying low to play it cool now, nigga. Ass niggas on the team, I've been known to get the green ever since I was 2'5", nigga. Coop hanging out the roof, nah, nigga. Cause I ain't stunting on them. Put my whole team on so they ain't wantin'. When niggas doing bad, you know that they be hating on you. Get the hoping that you fall, they be waiting on it. Bullshit get bread from the envy. Best friends get to looking like enemies. When you got it in this bank account empty. Perfect recipe to brittle out of jealousy. Looking from a bird's eye view. Learn from everything I've been through. Told my baby girl, if you ain't spending life with the nigga, never let him put a dick up in you. Cause if a nigga wrong, I'ma check that shit. And when you paper long, never flex that shit. Told my son, when you getting money, never trick it to a bop and flip it over, then invest that shit. Give a lot of game, trying to bless my kid. Gotta keep it real, that's the best shit. Got hitters up in Philly, back in Texas. When I get up on the track, yeah, I wreck shit.
Always up on my own. Don't need you all in my zone. Spend so much time alone while I'm riding strap on my chrome. Always up on my own. Don't need you all in my zone. Spend so much time alone while I'm riding strap on my chrome.
Going sip on my own. Don't need you all in my zone. Spend so much time alone.
Hey, I'm just following orders. Let me get one of those slow motion pictures, bro. One of the slow motion pictures.
You gotta shoot at 60 frames per second.
Come on,
They say they wanna hit that raw shit. These niggas claiming that they bullshit. These niggas better move and coach shit. Cause if they make the wrong move, it cost shit. You see me, they like, ooh, keep on stopping. I'm on my way up and they ain't gon' stop it. They say they wanna hit that raw shit. Coming up, I'm about to bullshit. They see me, they like, ooh, keep on stopping. I'm on my body, real niggas right beside me. Damn right, I brought my army. Going up like a rocket, and can't nobody stop me. These niggas garbage, so watch your mouth, boy. Coming all black, slithering house, call me mouth, boy. I'm off the hip like a cowboy. I'm a king, you should bow, boy. Shorty like, damn, man, you cut up. Nothing I can handle. 144 in the booth, going Rambo. Niggas do you dirty like a stick in a bando. That's why I play the corner like a bum with a banjo. I'ma lead by example. Ooh, keep on stopping, got this bitch off the hand. Got the juice, got the drip, about to hit the bitch with the salt. It ain't rap, this is salt. Can't taste a bitch unless you with the coke. They say they wanna hit that raw shit. These niggas claiming that they bullshit. These niggas better move and coach shit. Cause if they make the wrong move, it cost shit. Hey. One way, one way, one way, one way, one way. Coming up on my bullshit.
I do it how a veteran be. You better than me. I'm Reggie at the edge of the key. It's all money, no honey. Think you settle and see. You locked up, fucked up, and it's back to the streets. It's one West. You can check the residency. I reside like a legend in this shit. Lil nigga, I'm past veteran. Never feeling third, lil nigga, I'm past second. Guns, I gotta have them all like Ash Ketchum. Shotty break a nigga ribs up like his wife left him. We all steppin', kill you with kindness cause I'm dead nice. That 5'7" put you 6 feet, not talking height. That judge get
Always sip on my own. Don't need you all in my zone. Spend so much time alone while I'm riding trap on my chrome. Always sip on my own. Don't need you all in my zone. Spend so much time alone while I'm riding trap on my chrome.
Been out of these streets, nigga trying to eat while I duck police. Own family stealing from me. I'm on the phone me to pray, but white Jesus can't save me. Get him away from me. I don't know what to say. So many niggas hating me. Get him away from me.
Always sip on my own. Don't need you all in my zone. Spend so much time alone while I'm riding trap on my chrome. Always sip on my own. Don't need you all in my zone. Spend so much time alone while I'm riding trap on my chrome.
Always sip on my own. Don't need you all in my zone. Spend so much time alone while I'm riding around with my cone. Always sip on my own. Don't need you all in my zone. Spend so much time alone while I'm riding around with my cone. Trying to keep it on the true side, nigga. Laying low to play it cool now, nigga. Ass niggas on the team, I've been known to get the green ever since I was 2'5", nigga. Coop hanging out the roof, nah, nigga. Cause I ain't stunting on them. Put my whole team on so they ain't wantin'. When niggas doing bad, you know that they be hating on you. Get the hoping that you fall, they be waiting on it. Bullshit get bread from the envy. Best friends get to looking like enemies. When you got it in this bank account empty. Perfect recipe to brittle out of jealousy. Looking from a bird's eye view. Learn from everything I've been through. Told my baby girl, if you ain't spending life with the nigga, never let him put a dick up in you. Cause if a nigga wrong, I'ma check that shit. And when you paper long, never flex that shit. Told my son, when you getting money, never trick it to a bopper, flip it over, then invest that shit. Give a lot of game, trying to bless my kids. Gotta keep it real, that's the best shit. Got hitters up in Philly, back in Texas. When I get up on the track, yeah, I wreck shit.
Always sip on my own. Don't need you all in my zone. Spend so much time alone while I'm riding trap on my chrome. Always sip on my own. Don't need you all in my zone. Spend so much time alone while I'm riding trap on my chrome.
Always sip on my own. Don't need you all in my zone. Spend so much time alone while I'm riding around with my cone. Always sip on my own. Don't need you all in my zone. Spend so much time alone while I'm riding around with my cone.
I'm Israel. This is ISUPK. We started on 1 West Harlem, New York, under Commander Johnny Hanna. And here we're doing to talk about today is the Mexicans are Israelites. I repeat, the Mexicans are Israelites. And we know that, 1 second, let me fix my camera. And we know that due to curses in Deuteronomy and the promises in Deuteronomy, you know what I mean? Since I know it's very popular as a Judite to speak about the curses concerning our slavery, you know what I mean, and our past struggles. But I was actually inspired by the ISUPK Mexico under Captain Yasakar. I always say I was seeing periodically on ISUPK, you know what I mean? I'll go and subscribe to his classes and I would be inspired, and that's why I decided to do this class. You know what I mean? So I can branch out to those other to the other places. And the first scripture I want to get to is Deuteronomy chapter 27 and verse 1. And I'll just read it for you. It says, "And Moses, with the elders of Israel, commanded the people, saying, keep all the commandments which I command thee this day." So right there, that's when Christ is telling us to keep the commandments to this day. You know what I mean? And so we have to, hold on, what? 1 second. Yeah. It's like for technical difficulties, but like we were saying, we get in Deuteronomy 27, verse 1. It says, and Moses with the elders of Israel commanded the people, saying, keep all the commandments which I command thee this day. And so that's what the decree was given to the 12 tribes of Israel. And Mexicans are the 12 tribes of Israel, which is Issachar. You know what I mean? So we're talking about Issachar today. And also we can go to Deuteronomy 28 and verse 1 as well. It says, and it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all his commandments, which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee high above all the nations of the earth. Now, see, the tribe of Issachar, if we, the tribe of Judah, if matter of fact, the 12 tribes of Israel, if we all follow these laws, statutes, and commandments, the Most High God said he will put us above all the people of the land. You know what I mean? Who set us high above all of them, high above all of our oppressors, to all the other nations of the earth. You know what I mean? Because the Most High said they are like nothing. The Most High said they are like nothing, and they are like unto spittle. You know what I mean? And Most High God is telling us that we are the greatest ones on this planet. And to prove that even further, we go to Deuteronomy 7 and 6. Deuteronomy 7 and 6 says, for thou art an holy people unto the Lord thy God. The Lord thy God hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself, above all the people that are upon the face of the earth. So the Most High God set us above all the other nations. To be above something is to be better than. You know what I mean? If you look at the scoreboard, you know what I mean? If I'm above you, that means I did better than you. If I go to school and I get an A, it's above a B. You know what I mean? And a B is above a C. Israelites are top tier. We are above every other nation on this planet. You got that for me, scripture for me, Qual?
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 7, verse 6. For thou art an holy people unto the Lord thy God.
Right.
The Lord thy God hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself.
To be a special people unto himself. Go ahead.
Above all people that are upon the face of the earth.
Above all people that are upon the face of the earth. This is why I love the Most High. This is why I love the ISUPK under Commander John Ayana, because this is the only place where I actually read this verse. You know what I mean? You can talk to a Christian and they will literally say, they'll sit there and read this verse and they'll deny it. They'll say, that's okay, but God still loves everybody. You know what I mean? I don't know how they ever came to that conclusion. Me personally, you know what I mean? I just don't understand, and I just don't get it. And when I just think about Christians and how they operate, I'm like, damn, man, they got some real mental issues going on up there. You know what I mean? And at one point, I was like that. You know what I mean? So, but I wasn't that bad, though. Let me put that clear. I wasn't that bad. You know what I mean? Because I started breaking off from the Christianity, and I'm gonna sit back and thinking, some is not making sense here. God loves everybody, but then he tells somebody they're good. You know what I mean? God loves everybody, but he'll tell the Israelites to go out on a conquest. I don't know, get it. Now we can go to Deuteronomy and chapter 28 and verse 48. And we'll see what the Most High says that he's going to do to us if we break his laws, statutes, and commandments. You know what I mean? Because the Most High is serious, because he also says God is not mocked. You know what I mean? So what's written inside this Bible is going to come to pass. You go ahead and read it when you got it.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 48. Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies.
We shall do what?
Serve thine enemies.
Right. So the Most High says if we don't keep his laws, statutes, and commandments, that we are going to serve our enemies. Go ahead.
Which the Lord shall send against thee in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things.
Right. So the Bible just said we're going to serve them in everything, and we're going to be in want of all things, everything you can think of. Sex, like you can think about the government now. He gives us everything that we want. Shelter, Section 8, you know what I mean? Food stamps, but at what cost? The father has to be at the house for most of that stuff. You got to be a single mom. you got to raise your son to be a homosexual or your daughter to be a homosexual, and you got to accept their lifestyle. You know what I mean? You gotta worship their gods. You gotta celebrate their holidays. Keep going.
And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee.
He says, "We'll put a yoke of iron upon your neck." It's gonna look like a dog collar. You know what I mean? And that's what happened to the Judites. That's what happened to the 12 tribes of Israel, and that's also what happened to Issachar in Mexico. You know what I mean? In 1519, in the conquest of Mexico by Spain, which we'll begin into. Keep going. Verse 49.
Verse 49. The Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far.
It says a nation is going to come against you from afar. So that means there's going to be a group of people that's going to travel across the ocean just to get to you, put you in chains. Go ahead.
From the end of the earth.
Right.
As swift as the eagle flieth.
As swift as the eagle flieth. Now, what is the major symbol of any oppressor's nation? You take a think about it. It's the eagle. American flag got an eagle. The Mexican flag got an eagle. The Britons got an eagle. The eagle is all around. Keep going.
A nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand.
It says a nation whose tongue we shall not understand. You know what I mean? We don't know what, listen, man, my ancestors didn't know what English was. You know what I mean? Like, we didn't say hi to each other. We said shalom. You know what I mean? That's what we said. We said shalom. We don't know these other greetings. You know what I mean? Keep going. Verse 50.
Verse 50. A nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young.
So this nation isn't going to care about your elderly or your children and everybody in between. That's a wicked beast. You know what I mean? That is an evil nation that the Most High was going to send after us if we did not follow his law, statutes, commandments. And that's what happened to the Issachar and the Mexicans when they settled over in Mexico. Give you a brief history, right? I'm not sure if y'all know about the Spanish conquest of the Aztec Empire. You know what I mean? And the Spanish conquistadors. Get to my notes. So we all know about Christopher Columbus, right? When he came here in 1492 and he seen cities of gold, he seen that the Indians had jewels in their mouth. You know what I mean? But there's this other dude, his name is Hernan Cortez. He is a Spanish explorer. Let me get my computer real quick. Now, this devil is a Spanish explorer, right? He came over here in 1519, and he seen the Aztec Empire, and he saw how great it was. And one of the mistakes that the Aztecs did is they gave him a tour of the city. They showed him everything, you know what I mean? They took him around the Great Temple, and history goes, he asked them if they have gold, they have much gold. And the leader of this of the empire at the time, his name was I don't want to butcher his name, Salaki. I don't speak fluent Spanish. His name is Moctezuma II. And the capital of the time in 1519 was Tenochtitlan. I mean, I don't speak Spanish good. You know what I mean? Forgive me. I don't speak Spanish good. You know what I mean? But that's how it all started. So basically, this man named Cortez Hernandez, he conquered the Aztec Empire within 2 years. And he did it mostly by disease. Because, you know, when the Spanish came over here, they had smallpox. And the natives of the land didn't have an immunity against that. So they, You know what I mean? You read his stories about Christopher Columbus giving smallpox to the Native Indians through blankets and stuff like that.
Right.
They did those same Cortez did those same tactics to him. You know what I mean? And also how he conquered them so fast was the Aztecs. They wasn't. I forget the name of the other of like the other empires that he gathered, but the Aztecs had rivals because they was like the top city at the time. So they subjected the other tribes that was around them, and they would use the other tribes as like human sacrifices. So, facts. It was crazy. You know what I mean? So it wasn't hard for them. It wasn't hard for Cortez to persuade them to fight each other. Now, mind you, that's also they're all still Israelites. The Aztecs, the Incas, the Mayans, they're all Israelites still, but there's internal conflict. You know what I mean? And this also goes back to brotherhood. You know what I mean? Because when we're divided, that means that snake, that oppressor is going to come and he's going to talk smooth words to you. You know what I mean? He's going to try to get you to go against your brother. But moving on. And also Cortez. So when Cortez first landed in Mexico, of course, like I said before, he got a tour. He got a tour of the city. You know what I mean? But he looked at them. But the Mexicans at the time, the Aztecs, they didn't trust him too well. But I'm not going to say this emperor's name, man. It's Moctezuma. You know what I mean? He was a little more friendly to him. So as Cortez left, he went down to the surrounding. So he went down to the surrounding to the neighboring tribes that was over there, and he actually fought one of the neighboring tribes down there, and he captured a woman. And after he done all that, he captured this woman. Her name was La Malinche, Salakia. You know what I mean? So now he has a woman, right? And this woman spoke both Mayan and Spanish and the Aztec language, right? So now these people are using her as an interpreter of sorts. You know what I mean? So through her, he went and he started going around to the, like I said, to the other neighboring tribes over there, and he started gathering people together. And that's basically how this man was able to conquer Mexico within 2 years through disease and war. You know what I mean? He's getting your brothers to fight against each other. I mean, the oppressor is the devil that the Bible speaks of. Hey, Carl, can you give me that scripture again? Deuteronomy 28?
48.
Yes, sir.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 48. Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies.
Mm-hmm.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 48. Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee in hunger, and in thirst, and in nakedness,
Right.
and in want of all things.
Right.
And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck,
Right.
until he have destroyed you.
Right.
Verse 49. The Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand.
Right. So just like that brief history that I just told you, the Spanish inquisitors, Cortez Jimenez, we did not understand his language. We didn't understand it. He needed an interpreter from us to understand it. You know what I mean? And this is why the Most High brought this lunatic over here. You know what I mean? And we should all look at this as an important lesson. You know what I mean? First, that the oppressor is the devil. Always. You know what I mean? And that we as a people, the tribe of Issachar, all the 12 tribes need to come and gather ourselves together unto one nation and be that one body again, so we can go back and join the Most High. Matter of fact, let's get that scripture. You know where that scripture where it says, gather yourselves together, O nation not desired? Zephaniah, was it Zephaniah 2:1?
So I can say that again.
Is it Zephaniah 2:1?
I believe it is. I'll go there right now.
That's right, because the 12 tribes of Israel need to be brought back together, man.
I'll read it whenever you're ready.
Are you ready? Go ahead. Read it when you get it.
The book of Zephaniah, chapter 2, verse 1. Gather yourselves together. Yea, gather together, O nation not desired.
Right. Oh, nation not desired. So if you're a so-called Mexican out there, you know what I mean, and you listen to this class tonight, you're supposed to join with us, and we're supposed to serve the Lord together. You know what I mean? So we can get out these hellish conditions. You know what I mean? So we can take back our rightful spot as kings of the earth, priests of the earth. You know what I mean? Because once we are leading, you know what I mean, everything's going to be cool. The world's not going to be in mourning no more. Slakia. Can you read Deuteronomy 28:15 for me?
One moment, I'll get there now. The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 15. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments,
Right.
And his statutes,
Right.
which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee.
Right. So once again, you hear it. You know what I mean? That the Israelites is supposed to be serving the Most High God, following all his commandments down to the T. There's no pork, no shrimps, no lobsters. You know what I mean? We can't be eating that kind of stuff here, because the Most High says once we do break those laws, he's doing false idols. You know what I mean? Have no other God before me. I know the Aztecs, they worship some crazy gods. You know what I mean? But that was not part of the original plan. You know what I mean? That was not part of what the Most High wanted. And for that, since we were disobeying those laws, he sent those crazy Spanish inquisitors after us. And I want to read this article real quick, where it talks about how the Spanish, how they talk about their conquest. Because the oppressor is the devil, and this snake always tries to put like a good spin on it, like a happy ending type thing. This is from NPR.org, right? And it's talking about, the title is 500 years later, the Spanish conquest of Mexico is still being debated. This was written November 10th in 2019. And the part I'm about to read is how the Spanish portray their conquest. It goes, the story of the Spanish conquest, as has been commonly understood for 500 years, goes like this. Moctezuma surrendered his empire to Cortez. Now, off the rip, he is saying that this great Mexican leader surrendered his empire to Cortez. Like, he just gave it to him willingly. You know what I mean? The oppressor is the devil. I'm going to continue reading. Then it says, Cortez and his men entered, my Spanish is not good, Slakia, Tenochtitlan, and lived there peaceably for months. This is why we call the oppressor the devil, because if you let them write history, they never did anything wrong. They didn't do anything wrong, and this is part of their daily life, you know what I mean? Is to reject the atrocities that they committed and act like the atrocities they committed wasn't that big of a deal. I'm gonna keep reading. It says, and they lived there peaceably for months. until rebellious Aztecs attacked them. Now imagine you in your own land and a foreigner comes up to you, right? And they start killing everybody. They start taking everything. And they have the nerve to say that rebellious Aztecs attacked them. You know what I mean? So these people are These people are rebelling against the Spanish Inquisitors and their army that went down there. You know what I mean? They're rebelling against them. But until the Spanish, they think they're the villain. They're painting that the natives are the villain and they are the heroes. I'm gonna keep reading. And then it goes to say that Moctezuma was killed by friendly fire. It says Moctezuma was killed by friendly fire. Now, I did some research into this statement before I made the claim. Now, there are some sources that say that he was being a little too soft on the invaders. You know what I mean? And so I guess like I get to forget the words, like a co-op, you know what I'm talking about, like co-op D2 or something like that, where a co-op D2, something like that, is when like they overthrow the government within the, like, you know what I mean? They'll have like a rebel army within there because they don't like the way their leader's doing something. Like a coup or something? Yeah, like a coup, like a rebellion, you know what I mean? So something like, there is something like that that's reported that happened. So that might be true. But even how they're wording this inside this article is crazy, because they made it seem like they just killed him just because. I mean, the oppressor is the devil. I'm gonna continue reading. It says, the surviving conquistadors escaped the city and later returned with Spanish reinforcements. It says, listen, check out this next sentence. They bravely laid siege to Tenochtitlan for months and finally captured it on August 3rd in 1521. It says they bravely laid siege on that. Like, the way they're writing this article and this tiny expert makes it seem like they did a good thing, when really they're lunatics and they want to conquest and take over. And finish the last sentence says, with the Spanish taking their rightful place as leaders of the land, we know now as Mexico, conquest accomplished. The oppressor is the devil. You know what I mean? And this is why it's important that we as Judites, as Mexicans, as Native Indians, that we come back into the Most High, that we come back into following his laws, statutes, and commandments. So now that part of history is done, I'm gonna fast forward, because when I was doing my research, I was trying to find like genocide and like atrocities that was committed by the Spanish Inquisitors during the 1500s, during the 1800s, but there wasn't a lot of information for me. So I'm just going to fast forward to the 1800s, and I want to bring y'all unto a brother. His name was Vincent Guerrero. Now, in my research, I was very surprised about him. This, and for y'all who don't know, this is the brother that's on that is on the thumbnail. Now, I mean, his name is Vincent Guerrero, and I'm going to read a little bit about him. He was born in 1783. It says Vincent Guerrero, the second president of Mexico, was born in the small village of Tixla in the state of Guerrero. Now, his parents was Pedro Guerrero, and they called him an African Mexican. And his mother was Guadalupe Saldana, and she was a Native Indian. All right. I'm gonna scroll down. And it's going to tell you how this brother actually became so political against slavery and stuff like that. It says his travels took him to different parts of Mexico where he heard of the ideas of independence, because when he was a child, he would work as a mule driver with his father. So he traveled the world. So he traveled around Mexico like that. And so he's seen a lot of injustices because at the time, the Spanish were still in control. You know what I mean? So slavery was still present. And just like in the American slavery, there was a caste system between dark skin and light skin. You know what I mean? As they always put the lighter your skin, the better off you was at slavery, what we call a field Negro and a house Negro. You know what I mean? But I'm gonna keep reading. Okay, and through one of these trips, he met rebel General Jose Maria Morelos y Pavan. In November 1810, Guerrero decided to join Morelos. Slovakia, my Spanish is not that great. So in 1810 is when he decided to join this army commander, right? Then it goes, upon the assassination of Morelos by the Spanish, Guerrero became commander-in-chief. In that position, he made a deal with Spanish General August de Iturbide, right? Iturbide joined the independence movement and agreed with Guerrero on a series of measures known as El Plan de Aguilera. Slovakia. I don't know. Listen, I know I am butchering this Spanish. I'm going to practice. Slovakia. This plan gave civil rights to Indians, but not to African Mexicans. Guerrero refused to sign a plan unless equal rights were also given to African Mexicans and mulattoes. So here we see that Vincent Guerrero was fighting for the 12 tribes of Israel unknowingly because he's seen the oppression. You know what I mean? He's seen the oppressions that they was going through down in slavery. And that's why it's so great. You know what I mean? This brother is so great. You know what I mean? I'm going to keep reading. Clause 12 was then incorporated into the plan. It read, all inhabitants, without distinction of their European, African, or Indian origins, are citizens, with full freedom to pursue their livelihoods according to their merits and virtues. I'm going to keep going. Subsequently, Guerrero served in the 3-person junta that governed Islam, Lord on Christ. What's good with you, Hawk? Long time no see, man. That governed the then independent Mexico from 1823 through 1824 until the election that brought into power the first president of Mexico, Guadalupe Victoria. Guerrero, as head of the People's Party, called for public schools, land title reforms, and other programs of a liberal nature. Guerrero was elected the second president of Mexico in 1829. As president, Guerrero went on to champion the cause not only of the racially oppressed, but also of the economically oppressed. So this is just a brief history of this man named Vincent Guerrero, which I was very impressed because I didn't know about this. I didn't know about this general. You know what I mean? Because hold on, wait. I'm going ahead of myself. I'm gonna keep reading. Guerrero formally abolished slavery on September 16th, 1829. So Vincent Guerrero is the reason why Mexico abolished slavery. You know what I mean? Because this brother looked at all the injustices that happened, you know what I mean? And he said, that's not, you know what I mean? He looked at the Spanish ruling, you know what I mean? Because that was the Spanish enslaving everybody, not the native Mexicans of the land at the time, you know what I mean? They wasn't the one doing it. It was the Spanish that was doing it. And he abolished that when he became in power. It says shortly thereafter, he was betrayed by a group of reactionaries who drove him out of his house. He was captured and ultimately executed him. Guerrero's political discourse was one of the civil rights for all, but especially for Afro-Mexicans. Mexicans with hearts full of pride call him the greatest man of color. Now, as I was doing my research on this brother, the Mexicans are taught about this guy, you know what I mean, about Vincent Guerrero. We are not. Here in America, we are not taught about the Mexicans and their contribution to freeing slaves. You know what I mean? Because I didn't know anything about this man. And for my next article that I studied, we're going to talk about, let me bring my slide up. We are going to talk about, it's called the Mexican Underground Railroad, right? It's very, very interesting, man. So the Mexican Underground Railroad is not as popular as the Underground Railroad that Harriet Tubman led, you know what I mean? But the Mexicans had a system as well. And let me just read this. The Mexican Underground Railroad, it starts from, okay, I gotta work on my Spanish again. El Camino Real de La Tojas, which was around 1804, where they was taking slaves down. It was like a major trade route, you know what I mean, that the slaves used to go down. And so they used this trade route to going down into it was from Texas all the way into to Mexico. And they had to pass the Rio Grande River. And on that river was very treacherous, you know what I mean? Like a lot of brothers and sisters died trying to cross that river. But they was doing it because the price of freedom is worth more than gold, you know what I mean? It's worth more than that. And these brothers wanted to be free, man. Let me get back to the Bible now. All right, Carl, can you give me Deuteronomy 28 and 32?
Sir. The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 32. Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people.
Right.
And thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long. And there shall be no might in thine hand.
Right. So I'm just reading the curses that also befall Issachar, because they was also lynched. They was also tortured and brought through slavery. You know what I mean? And that's also a very terrible event to happen. You know what I mean? But as long as we serve the Most High, we would get out of this hell. You know what I mean? And I almost forgot about this one part, man. I almost did. There was this city in Mexico. Let me get it real quick. It was called, I'm about to butcher this name again. Coahuila. It was some city down in northern Mexico, right? And at the time,
Sir, are you reading from a website or some more slides?
it's from a website.
Oh, okay. You want to tell me? I'll get to it and I'll read so you don't gotta.
Well, it's on like a YouTube video.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Well, I was looking at like articles online, but now this particular part is on the YouTube video. You know what I mean? So it's called Coahuila, you know what I mean? And this part is where Mexico, okay, so how can I put this? Mexico was giving out land. And so there was this part where African or the Israelite slaves would go, the Mexicans, and the Seminole Indians. So we have Reuben, Issachar, and Judah all in inside this area, right? Because we was all being oppressed and we was all being locked in. But I'm going to share my screen real quick, and I'm gonna get y'all some videos. 1 second, bear with me. I'm gonna get this video real quick. Can you hear that on YouTube?
I'm going to it right now. So far.
You don't hear nothing? Slacky, y'all, I'm trying to share this video, but it is not working. Slacky. All right, so that didn't work. I'm trying to share this video so y'all can get a better understanding of the Mexican Underground Railroad. It's unfortunate. All right, Carl, can you give me give me 2868?
Come on, sir. It's Deuteronomy 28 and 68.
Yeah.
Come on, sir. It's the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 68. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way of I speak unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again, and there shall and there ye shall be sold unto your enemy for bondmen and bondwomen.
Right, it's for bondmen and bondwomen, man. And that's what happened to our Issacharite brothers down in Mexico. Because really the slave trade started in 1492. You know what I mean? It started with the Taino Indians. You know what I mean? And then he went to the west coast of Africa, and it started getting us. You know what I mean? But as history shows, Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians always stood together. You know what I mean? And we can see clear history records of the Israelites and the Native Indians and the First Nation, man, how they always came to our defense. You know what I mean? How we always came to each other to help us. And the only time we would fight against each other is when the oppressor stepped in. Is when the oppressor stepped in and tried to lie and had to sneak his way in there. You know what I mean? But I really want to get this video. Out, man. Salaki.
Typically, when we think of the history of slavery here in Texas, we think
Can you hear it now?
in Galveston. But I'm speaking with a couple of historians today who say we need to think of that history even further south, because decades before June,
solid. All right,
were
I'm gonna rewind it real quick. Hold on.
This Hispanic Heritage Month, we are highlighting the history of Latinos and their part in history, helping Blacks escape slavery. Fox 26's Dominique Keith is in Galveston with the story.
Typically, when we think of the history of slavery here in Texas, we think of Juneteenth in Galveston. But I'm speaking with a couple of historians today who say we need to think of that history even further south because decades before Juneteenth, Hispanics were helping enslaved blacks escape to Mexico.
The Mexican government welcomed fugitive slaves.
Documents dating back beyond the 1800s here in the Galveston and Texas History Center that historians Samuel Collins III and Dr. Juan Galvan are showing me give a new outlook on the Underground Railroad, which most equate to the system that helped slaves escape north to freedom.
We often think about Canada, but enslaved people in Texas actually ran south to Mexico because Mexico had outlawed slavery.
Although not everyone describes the help Hispanics gave as work on the railroad.
Because when you say Underground Railroad, that implies a network as sophisticated as the one to Canada.
But Dr. Galvan says research shows Hispanic abolitionists were well organized as many came together to help thousands of enslaved blacks in Texas make it to freedom in Mexico.
There were many marriages between Mexican men and African-American enslaved women.
Part of the story is that
I paused the videos. Did y'all hear that part? He said there was a lot of marriages between African-American men and the slave and the Mexicans, you know what I mean? So we was marrying within our tribes, you know what I mean? So that's why, I mean, they might look darker in complexion, you know what I mean? But they're all still Israelites down there. I'm gonna keep playing.
is that people were not just waiting to be rescued.
Collins says some slaves saved for years to pay to be taken to Mexico. When Texas was still Mexican territory, it was illegal to have slaves here. So slave owners began drafting contracts like this. The papers would claim the people listed, including some as young as 3 years old, agreed to work for them for life.
For the term of 9.
I'm gonna pause it right there again. Look, man, look, I saw how evil the oppressor is. So we started getting free. And so they had to make up a contract where say that will work for life for you. You know what I mean? To force a 3-year-old to sign that. Doesn't that sound familiar? Y'all remember? Huh? Yeah. Little young as three. And y'all remember like a few years ago when the American government had the Mexicans on the border, and they were told to represent themselves in court. Do y'all remember that?
Yeah, slightly, sir.
Yeah. Go ahead.
If I could, what you're saying sounds familiar as far as like people as young as 3 that, our Mexican brothers and sisters signed away their lives on contracts. When we went to the John Dickinson plantation, there were contracts that were signed on the plantation that one of the tour guides explained to us, and they didn't even know what they were actually signing. Even, there were young people there, but the main point was they didn't understand what they were signing. So there were sometimes when they were in a violation of the contract, they would end up having to work for the rest of their natural life.
Right. Excellent point. Because the oppressor is the devil. You know what I mean? And they still they still do these contract things even to this day. You know what I mean? Like how many contracts did they write up with the Native Indians? I think it's over 100. And they broke every treaty. I don't know how y'all can still trust these fools, man. I'm gonna continue with go ahead.
It's like if I could, just to piggyback on what you're saying, yeah, like you could go to court and it could be saying something. You still need like a lawyer or something to explain what it means, because
exactly.
You know what I mean? He's like, you sign here, he was like, basically, tell me exactly what this means so I can sign it. Like this like any contract nowadays, like you gotta really like understand what you're signing.
Absolutely. You're absolutely correct. You know what I mean? And this is why the oppressor is the devil.
Right.
I mean, because he'll give you something that you don't know nothing about. Like, how can a 3-year-old sign a contract? You know what I mean? Saying that you're going to work for the rest of your life. And you as a man, you sit there and say to yourself, this is good. You know what I mean? This is good business. But they're the devil and they don't give a damn about us. I'm going to continue with the video.
99 years to learn the art and mystery of farming and planting.
So friends to the south stepped in.
In 1857, the government of Mexico amends the Constitution now, declaring that any former slave who steps on Mexican territory is now a Mexican citizen and therefore a free person.
Once slaves escaped to Mexico, many made good lives, including a couple of Sam Houston's former slaves.
One of them became a barber and opened a barber shop in Matamoros, Mexico. Another one became an officer in the Mexican army.
And these are just a few of the books available on the topic. The historians are encouraging you to head to the library and get to know the information for yourself. In Galveston, I'm Damalie Keith, Fox 26 News.
Solid. And I'm going to get y'all to watch this other video too, where I was talking about Vincent Guerrero.
Relocate to Indian territory. And in 1850, the Seminole Indians, who had been forced from their Florida homelands, decided.
You really piqued my
So
interest
this lady,
in President Vicente Guerrero.
this lady wrote a book called "Going South to Freedom," and this guy is giving like a brief interview of her, and she's going to talk about Vincent Guerrero right here.
You really piqued my interest in President Vicente Guerrero now. I did see a drawing of him. He certainly had what you would think of as black characteristics, physical characteristics. What was being black or even partially black not a disqualifier to, I guess it wasn't a disqualifier to be president of Mexico in the 19th century?
Vicente Guerrero was the descendant, so he's of African descent. He also has indigenous descent. He was an incredibly powerful and important figure in Mexico's independence movement. He basically controlled southern Mexico in the latter parts of Mexico's independence movement. And really, Mexico would not have secured its independence without his help. So he had gained fame and renown through his actions as a general. And so his own actions did help him to secure political success as well. But the fact that he was able to become the president of Mexico in 1829, when the United States took until the 21st century to elect a president of African descent, I think goes to show how different the racial hierarchies in Mexico and the United States were. And it's a really interesting question that I don't want to dive too much into, but because Mexico had such a large indigenous population that intermixed with the descendants of those enslaved people who were brought to Mexico during the colonial period, that there was just not the ability to impose the same sort of rigid racial hierarchies that were imposed in the United States. And Mexico's independence movement was really opposed to those racial hierarchies. During the colonial period, there was a really elaborate system of castes that would delineate, the name for someone who was the descendant of a white person and a person of African descent, a white person and an indigenous person. They had this very complicated system of delineating all of these different types of intermixture. But in 1821, when Mexico declared its independence, it abolished all of those distinctions of caste. And so it is incredibly difficult, next to impossible, to find any official record in Mexico during the 19th century that includes any information about someone's race. And obviously that doesn't mean that racism didn't exist in Mexico, but the abolition of those official distinctions of caste made it a lot harder for the government to differentiate between people of different races and to the disadvantage of one group. So these are just a couple of examples of the ways in which Mexico is just very different from the United States. Not to say that it is a racial paradise.
All right, so that was just a brief history on Vincent Guerrero, well, as I was explaining before. And now for this next one, I got 2 more videos for y'all. We're about to watch. What we're about to watch right now is where I was talking about how the Seminole Indians, the blacks and Hispanics all settled down in this one area.
Who continues to try to provide an alternative to indigenous peoples who are being forced to relocate to Indian territory. And in 1850, the Seminole Indians, who had been forced from their Florida homelands, decide to come to Mexico and basically settle in the northern Mexican state of Coahuila. Now, the Seminoles in Florida had sort of a contingent of the descendants of fugitive slaves who had escaped to Florida during the colonial period from Georgia and the Carolinas. And that contingent is known as the Black Seminoles. So the Seminole and the Black Seminole moved to Mexico, and their community in northern Mexico becomes a locus, a real magnet for freedom seekers from Texas and Louisiana. We see a huge number of enslaved people escaping to join that particular community, and their descendants, in fact, still live in one town in that northern Mexican state of Coahuila. So there's this really interesting interplay between indigenous people and people of African descent crossing this border. Maybe I'll stop there.
All right, so that's what I was talking about, that city that they all settled to in northern Mexico, you know what I mean? Because the blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians always held each other down, you know what I mean? And for my last video, I'm just going to talk about the Mexican Underground Railroad, you know what I mean? Because I like the way this Judite is talking right here. I like how she explains it.
And to reach Mexico. During the height of American slavery, the El Camino Real de los Tejas, one of the main trade routes between Texas and Mexico, was secretly used.
It's like this was the trade route that I was trying to explain, you know what I mean? But the video does a lot better because they can pronounce the name a lot more fluently than I can. Slovakia.
By freedom seekers escaping from Louisiana.
This path would have gone all the way towards freedom into Mexico.
In 1804, it was key to an armed resistance by enslaved people ready to fight for their freedom.
The group of slaves from the Natchitoches Parish region got together and decided they were going to make a break for Spanish territory. This happened amongst slaves from at least 6 different plantations. When they started out from the one plantation, as they traveled along and went to the other, then you would hear, letting the people know, hey, it's time to gather, it's time to go.
The organizers of the escape chose to use whistles as a signaling method, allowing people on different plantations to communicate undetected.
One of the biggest things that they did in the planning was to time out when they were going to leave. They left on a Sunday. The slave owners would have been at church, which bought the fugitives more time before they would have even been discovered as missing. At the last stop, they stole horses, they stole guns. That lets me know that they were willing to defend themselves. But right before they could get to Spanish territory, they were caught.
Punishment after recapture was swift and brutal.
They were brought into the town square, laid down, face down, tied up, and then whipped. They said whipped until they were bloody. I have been able to piece together this information based on largely Spanish documents. But to this day, there's still resistance to it.
The National Park Service has spearheaded the use of modern technology to highlight El Camino Real de los Tejas route taken by freedom seekers. This new imagery reinforces Rolanda's research. Now future generations will know the role the paths played in the Underground Railroad and the successes as well as the failures of those who took it in search of freedom.
I just took it on personally that my work would focus on adding the parts that have been left out all along. These are the kind of things I want to talk about so that my nieces and nephews growing up will know what contributions people of African descent made.
The freedom seekers who managed to evade capture and reach the U.S.-Mexico border still had to face one more deadly obstacle: the Rio Grande River.
Crossing the Rio Grande was a very dangerous feat. A lot of individuals often lost their lives trying to cross it.
But some did make it across. In 1936, the Library of Congress slave narrative testimony from Sally Rowe revealed that her father and 3 uncles reportedly crossed the Rio riding bales of cotton and paddling with sticks.
Keep it to the left.
Got it.
Members of Texar, a Texas-based search and rescue team, have witnessed firsthand the deadly risks and unseen dangers freedom seekers would have faced crossing into Mexico.
We're never going to win against Mother Nature. The power of the water, it's relentless. It's a hazard that's often underestimated.
Despite its incredible strength today, at one point the Rio Grande was even more menacing.
200 years ago, rivers like the Rio Grande were much more powerful, swift. If someone is swimming across the Rio Grande, the most deceptive part could be on the far shore closest to freedom. Could be swifter current, could be deeper, as well as current can push you back out to the center depending on conditions.
The southern routes taken by freedom seekers on the Underground Railroad were often deadly, and many perished crossing the Rio Grande trying to reach Mexico.
200 years ago, this river was so powerful, it would wash riverside ranches away.
But after risking life and limb to avoid capture, some freedom seekers with limited means still managed to survive this final stretch in a treacherous journey. Historian Roseanne Bachagarza is uncovering the complicated truth.
Across the river is Mexico. Where we are standing right now is Texas. During that period of time, slavery was still the law of the land, but freedom could be found just across the river. Steamboats were traveling up and down the river so that they could trade with the ranchers and the farmers in the region.
The trade network between farmers in Texas and Mexico is the perfect cover for an Underground Railroad route.
Freedom seekers also used ferry landings to cross the river to the other side.
And Roseanne has uncovered one Texas family on the border that helped make it happen.
All right, man, I appreciate everybody that rocked with me. I mean, that was just a little bit of a brief history on Mexico and their contribution to slavery. You know what I mean? With that, and I'll pass the class over to Precinct Officer Kaal. Oh, hold on, Sister Kana. That was an expert. So the lady who was talking about the Rio Grande River, it was just type in the Underground Railroad in Mexico, and it's like a 5-minute clip. It's like a 5-minute clip on there. That's all. It's like a 5-minute clip, and you'll be able to see it. I don't have the exact name of the documentary, but if you're looking for the other one I had, when a lady was talking about Vincent Guerrero, it's called South to Freedom. And you can go check it out. All right, so lock it for that. All right, cool. Let me get you set up real quick. Hey, Carmen, can you put the camera on him, please? Go ahead and get started. Yeah.
This is the ISUPK security announcements. New rules for new brothers and new sisters. When you are a new brother or sister that comes into the school, They are off limits for 6 months. They are to be saluted only. They are here to learn and shed themselves of the world. If they need transportation, the teacher will arrange it. After 6 months, if a brother or sister has an interest in a particular person, they are to seek counsel from the heads. We also do tithes, which is a commandment. You can find that in Numbers 18:21 and also Malachi 3:8-10. In Hebrew, it is ma'ashra, which means 10th in Hebrew. It is 10% of every penny of any increase the Lord gives you. There's also a priest fund, which is a free will offering. For priests, this is not mandatory. Whatever amount you would like to give. Us brothers here in the UPK also accept bottles as well, whatever choice you would like. We do have an up and coming holy convocation Friday 15th of September that can be found in Leviticus 23rd chapter verses 24 through 25. If you want to be a trooper in the school, remember to wear all black boots, black headband, scarf, pants, and with that being said, a mitre.